Hey there, my name is Ruben and welcome to this special video in my channel. Now, tools is something that I get asked about all the time. Seriously, all the time. But a lot of my content recently has not been about tools. I've been talking about some of the other issues I've been helping clients solve: people, process, how to think about KPIs, strategy. But today, we're talking about Adjust. And Adjust is a mobile attribution provider similar to AppsFlyer and Branch, which I also have videos on. And mobile attribution is hard. It's really complicated. But tools like Adjust make it easier. Now, in today's video, I want to help you understand three things. First, look at where Adjust is today in 2020, futures company-wise, where they seem to be going, what's their position in the market. Next, I want to help you understand how Adjust fits into your stack, whether you're a consumer, or mobile B2B, or some other variation. Where does it make sense? Where doesn't it seem to make sense? How to think about this. And lastly, how tools as a whole fit into a comprehensive strategy. So talk about the 3 Ps, how Adjust might play with other providers or tools in your stack. And this is really a comprehensive strategic conversation, the one that I have with clients all the time. So I'm not going to cover every little feature or report about a tool or show you every little thing. That it's something to be done somewhere else. Instead, really help you understand the strategic conversation that you need to have around a tool like AppsFlyer and how to think about bringing it into your product. So I'm going to show you the website, a little bit about their product, some reports, things like that. And I'm going to share my screen. So that being said, let's dive right in. We can follow along and learn a little bit more about Adjust in 2020. All right, let's dive in to Adjust. Now, mobile attribution providers are pretty critical for anyone who runs mobile apps. And the reason why is whenever a user wants to install your app, they have to go through the App Store. And this means there's a gap, like a black box of attribution data. They may click through your website or an ad, and they go through the App Store, and then they pop up when they install the app. So tools like Adjust and AppsFlyer and Branch, which I'll be also talking about in other videos, come in to close that gap, to figure out what happened in between the click and the install. So they really have a couple or a few, maybe 3 things that I think define them and that are quite common across all the products. We first have attribution, and attribution is as expected. We look at all the different channels and campaigns and then try to understand which ones are driving the most conversions, whether it's clicks, installs, and in some cases, retention. Adjust, like the other partners, has quite a bit of integrations here, and they're also a Facebook marketing partner, which is important because not all attribution providers are. And if you're not a Facebook marketing partner, you get limited data. So I would say their attribution is quite solid. It's very good. Then you have analytics, and this duplicates a little of the functionality that you might see in tools like Mixpanel or Amplitude. But it's helpful. With clients, we almost never use this as much. We typically want to get our conversion data out of Adjust or Branch or AppsFlyer and then send it to wherever we're analyzing user behavior, whether that is Mixpanel or Amplitude or something else. I would say their analytics is solid too. It's pretty comparable. Where I think Adjust shines really well is actually in fraud prevention. And fraud prevention comes down to helping you figure out if any of your clicks or installs or users are bots or they're not real users. And I think Adjust has done quite a bit of work here, and they use it quite a bit in their marketing materials. They even have this Unbottify sort of like mini app or mini product that can be used to to detect in-game cheating or any other fraudulent activity. So their fraudulent work is quite strong, and I think it's one of the things that differentiates from their competitors. So attribution is good, analytics is good, fraud prevention is quite good. They have all the other basic functionality you might expect, deep linking, audience building, and so on. One thing to note here about Adjust, and I think you'll see this if you watched some of my other videos on software tools, is as companies get more mature, as a space matures really, the tools are becoming more similar to each other. The functionality is quite similar, and the things that makes them different, it's not as clear anymore. So these days, if I'm with a new client and we're debating between Adjust, Branch, and AppsFlyer, we'll look at some of the specific things, and we'll try to make a choice based on what makes sense. But what I'm also seeing is that if we had gone with our second choice or third choice, it still will probably be still pretty good. It still has a lot of what we need or what we want. So don't get too caught up in this search. Just as these tools become similar, and it's also a frustration that I hear from clients and readers that they find it hard to make a decision because it seems like they are similar, and that is the case. Reporting in Adjust is quite standard. Trend lines, understanding which networks or which ads or which channels are driving conversions. The other thing I mentioned, and let me see if I can go find it right here, is actually their integrations. So the name of the game in 2020 is really integrations, and it's not just about advertising networks, but making sure that you can take your data from one place to another. Almost all companies have a stack of some kind, and for Adjust in particular, we want that mobile conversion data, and we want to send it to places like Mixpanel, to Amplitude, to Segment, maybe Google Analytics, which is here, Adobe, there's Lean Plum, and so on, right? So we wanna have access to this conversion data, and Adjust has done a really good job with this integration work. Now, as a company, as a whole, Adjust is doing well. They raised, I think, about $220 million, something around that, back in the summer of 2019, in June 2019. So they're a mature company. They're later stage. They're a stable company, and I think there's a lot of growth for them. Now, interesting enough, AppsFlyer, a competitor, also raised a similar amount in January 2020, so recently from when this video is coming out. Now, the space is, I think, becoming tougher. If you look at any recent ad by Apple or Google, the main mobile companies here, they're really leaning much more heavily on privacy. We see changing behaviors around GDPR, the European privacy law, or CCPA, the California privacy law, and I think I've done a few videos on this. But privacy is changing, and it's becoming more important, and the companies, the big companies like Apple and Google, are starting to tweak their products to be more privacy friendly. What this means is I do think attribution will become harder. Apple will likely stop releasing certain data publicly. It might be certain device IDs or fingerprints and so on. So the job that these companies are doing, like Adjust, and really any analytics tool, but in particular mobile attribution tools, will become harder. And this is just part of the course. So it's a tool you will still need, because they'll still help you close gaps that might be impossible for you to close without them. But the data will become less and less accurate over time. So I think that's where the space is going. I think part of the funding comes down from that fact that people and companies will need tools like this anymore, even if the data is less accurate as time goes on. Finally, the other thing I always like to share with clients, especially when we're talking about tools, is understanding we're in the broad view of a strategy the tools fit in. So I have this little pyramid here that I call the 3 Ps. And this to me are the 3 areas that we want to cover and tackle in any kind of data strategy at a very simple level. We first have people, and people is really anyone who's going to use the data. What kind of skills do they have? What kind of format should we present the data to them to make it more easily accessible? And the things that an executive might need might be very different from what a product manager or a marketing manager might need. So there's different needs and a different scope for different people. Then we have process, and process is how teams are going through the data. So we start with simple things like KPIs and dashboards, and what's the recurrence of those things. And we also want to understand if teams have a way to explore data, to uncover insights. So this all comes down to process. And finally, we have providers. And this is where Adjust falls in, and this is where Mixpanel and Amplitude and so on. And to me, if you understand people and process, then you'll have an easier time finding the right tool or the right provider to fill in the gaps of your team and what makes your team unique. But if you start at the top, then you have this weird thing where you might have something that's good, like Adjust, it's a good mobile attribution provider, but you're still not able to use it because you didn't take into account what your people were able to do or not to do, and you have no idea about what's the process for using a tool like Adjust on a regular basis. So this is the order in which I think companies should tackle a data strategy, which is a little different from what I've seen companies do. It's typically top to bottom instead of bottom up. In summary, I think Adjust is a solid tool. I think it's helpful to look at how it compares to Branch and AppsFlyer, other 2 tools I'll be doing. And there is more players in this space. They want to make it seem like there's only 3. I think there's probably 10 or 15 at least in this space. But this is the 3 that I see come up the most often and the ones that I use the most with clients. If you have any questions, post them in the comments. Always happy to answer them. Be sure to like and subscribe this video. There's a few other ones that I'm doing right now to update 2020, and my hope is to actually redo this every year. Take a look at the change in space, any new players, anything that's interesting. Once again, my name is Ruben, and I'll talk to you soon.